Welcome back to another edition of Digging Deep. It is your favorite host. I'm Tara.
I'm Cody.
And Cody, what have you been up to?
Well, you know the saying, careful what you wish for?
Yeah, I
do.
do.
We're having a really great example of that right now.
What were we wishing for?
Well, it's been really, really dry, and it's been raining for like the past week, and it's going to be raining for the next probably 5 to 7 days.
Yeah, like this time last week, it was 42 degrees and a heat wave?
Yeah.
And then it started raining and it never stopped.
It hasn't stopped. We've had a couple of, breaks here and there for maybe half a day or a few hours, but it's not dried out enough for us to be out planting in beds or in the field or anything.
Yeah, we haven't planted a single thing all week, I don't think.
No, it's just been too wet. We don't want to compact our soil. We don't want to ruin it.
But before the heat wave came, we did do a big push. We got a lot of things in the ground before the rain.
Yes, we did.
What did we get in? We got all the tomatoes are in.
All of the tomatoes are in now. You and Joyce worked on flowers. Nathan and Jeremy, they worked on the vegetable field. So
yeah, and then it rained and rained and rained and rained and rained. All right, sorry. I'm just trying to get my things set up. Let's see. What struggles are we having this growing season due to the weather, and what are you doing to overcome it?
So far this year, I was out doing a little scouting earlier this week. Our summer squash, our zucchinis, they did not do well. They are super stressed out. There's a mix there probably of like some drought stress and some cucumber beetle stress. So those all need to be replanted. The germination on our snap beans was kind of low, so we're going to do some interplanting of that as well. So far, everything else is looking fine, but we'll see what's going to come probably next week once the rain lets up.
And what would cause the germination to be poor on those beans?
The drought, because we don't water anything as we put it into the field. We try to plan around the weather for any rain that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was so dry, when we put them in, they probably just didn't get enough moisture because the soil was already so dry. It just couldn't get enough moisture.
And then we got a really heavy rain after. Remember, a lot of the beans got pushed to the soil.
Yes,
pushed to the top.
That too.
I pushed them down, but
yeah.
It was still bad times. Is it a problem replanting the beans now?
No, not at all. They'll come pretty quick, 50, 60 days, so you're fine to replant now.
Listen, I like having them replanted. That means more beans for longer.
Yes.
Instead of all of the beans at once.
Yep.
So what other struggles are we having with all this rain? Any problems there?
Outside of planting and, germination issues and stuff like that, not being able to work in the field, like soil compaction issues, we would definitely want to try to avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the big ones that are coming to my mind. Did you have any that were standing out to you while planting?
No, I just want to get back. I want to get it done.
Yeah.
I want to get it done before the heat of the summer really sets in.
Yeah, I'm hoping next week will still be cool-ish, but not raining, so we can get everything in.
Yeah, the greenhouse is like almost half empty though.
Yes.
So we're working on it.
It's very exciting to see it fill up, and then it's very satisfying to see it empty.
Yeah.
And I'm at the point I'm like, I want to see it empty, so.
I do want to see it empty. I want to. Well, I like watering the greenhouse on the weekends, but it would be nice to do nothing all weekend.
Yes.
This year we expanded our container trials. How come?
So there's been a large push the last few years to have more varieties for balconies, patios, decks, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So we're expanding that, and we're trying more varieties that have been bred specifically for that. So we've expanded that. We doubled that from last year easily.
Yeah, easily. We've got more. And I'd even like to throw some more stuff in there if we have the space. Like, let's throw some carrots in.
Yeah, we can certainly do that too.
Do all sorts of things. We have a question already. Marjorie, who I think was our big winner one day. I think she won our Grow Light kit.
Oh.
She says, can you transplant a honeysuckle shrub with success? If so, how? Or could I start a new one from a cutting? Mine was full of beautiful orange blossoms for several years, but this winter it fell down. By the time I braced it back up, a large portion of it seemed to be dying. I trimmed off a lot of the dead branches, and it has less blooms this year. It actually has been growing taller than I anticipated when I planted it close back to my home. I'm okay with moving it, but I would like to have it grow in another spot.
Right.
And Marjorie did win her light garden.
Well, we're glad to have you back, Marjorie. So it sounds like the plant's still living. From what she's saying, it's not flowering, which isn't a surprise. If it did get knocked over, it was probably stressed out, disturbed the roots. It doesn't have quite as much energy as it once did. We're seeing a lot of that this year versus last year with the cold snap that happened last season. There wasn't a lot of blooms on fruit trees and bushes. This year it's just an explosion of growth. So if you aren't seeing any flowers this year, I wouldn't panic. It'd probably just kind of taking the year off, being a little chill, laying low, growing, establishing itself again for next year. You could take cuttings this year, although it's not a great time to start taking cuttings. We're getting late into the season, so at this point you're looking at trying to root that cutting, grow it on for the season, and then you need some place to winter it for the season. Most times stuff like that is best done if you have like a sun porch that stays in like the high single digits, low double digits, sinking the pot in the ground if you're able to, if you have the room. It's just a lot more maintenance doing cuttings this time of year. The best time to take cuttings and to root them is like in March.
Marjorie says it does have some blooms, but I think she may get a large portion of it kind of died. So should she move it now if she was going to, or move it later?
I would move it later. I would move it probably in the fall once it starts to go dormant. I would move it then.
Yeah.
You could also try some regenerative cutting with it as well. That might try to bring it back. It'll take a few years, but that might bring back some of the life in the plant again.
Yeah, and make it bush out again.
Yeah.
Have a little ugly phase before it gets beautiful.
That's
again.
right. Everyone, you go for a haircut and you have that super awkward phase, and you just give it a week and then it fills out and looks great.
I'm having an awkward phase. It's so humid. My hair is like eating up all that humidity. Carolyn says, when can I dig up and move my ornamental lilies?
So you can do those in the fall or in the spring when they're dormant. I wouldn't touch them while they're growing or when they're flowering. When they're flowering especially, they're putting all their energy into flowering. It's already a stressful time for them in a sense, so not when they're flowering. If they're growing like foliage and leaves, they're kind of preparing to flower or they're getting prepared for winter, so you want to avoid that as best as possible. So the best time to do it is in the fall or the winter after the leaves have all dropped from frost or it's gone dormant. And then take like a flag or a stake or something. You can just kind of put it exactly where it is, and that way you know when everything's gone, you know where to dig up.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. I think the ornamental lilies are early this year.
Yeah, I think so.
Even like the daylilies are all out.
Yeah.
I was like, it's early.
This early heat we've been having has probably been driving a lot of stuff up.
Well, our scapes are out, and I was looking last year, and it was July 7th when we harvested our scapes last year.
Okay.
And our scapes are basically ready now.
So we're like a week and a half, 2 weeks ahead then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love scapes. Carolyn says, thank you. All right. Go on to this question. Krista says, while my pear tree was blooming, there were blue bugs all over the flowers. They seem to have moved on, but will this hurt the fruit?
You'll have to watch them to make sure they don't come back, but they're more or less just there nibbling on like the nectar and some of the pollen and stuff in the flowers. So without pictures, we can't really identify what they are, but just keep a close eye for when the fruit come back. If they do come back, send us some photos. We'll help you identify them and the best method to try to stop them.
Yeah. Do you have a pear tree? No, you have a peach tree.
We have peach trees, we have plum trees, apple trees, we have cherry trees, although the cherry trees are not happy. They have fire blight.
Uh-oh.
So they're going to have to be removed.
That's a sad story.
Yes, we tried to stop it. It looked good last year. This year it's the whole plant, so they have to be taken out.
I know a place you can get some new cherry bushes if you needed to.
Maybe we'll talk that later. I need to know your source.
I don't know. They're probably like the biggest seed company in Canada, maybe.
Ooh, sounds like you have a great source.
Mm-hmm. Sandra, I have tiny holes in all of my radish leaves. What's eating them, and will it hurt the radish? Also, how do you know when they're ready to harvest?
That sounds like flea beetle. It's been happening to our radish. You'll see it on brassicas, arugula, any spicy greens, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to hurt the bulb. They're just chewing on the leaves. And then you're asking when to harvest. You can really harvest them at any time. Usually like an inch across is usually the best time to harvest a radish. Depends on what it is, but if we're talking like the typical red round radish, an inch across is usually good.
Yeah, and if they sometimes they can split, especially like after this rain.
That's a great point.
We might get some splitting when the sun comes out. They absorb a lot of water, and then the sun comes out, and they just have a little growth spurt.
Yeah, that's a great point. So if you can harvest, once the rain ends before the sun comes out, you can harvest them then. But yeah, it's been perfect conditions. It's been so dry for so long, and then we had all this influx of moisture, and they're just sucking it all up. And as soon as the sun comes up, you can always tell after a good rain when the sun comes out, everything just like bulks up more, and that's essentially what's going to happen. It's just going to
Yeah.
split down the side.
Yeah, and tomatoes are susceptible to that splitting.
Yeah.
Peppers will get corking. They don't split the same, they cork.
Yeah.
Kathy says, you had answered my questions about hydrangeas that hasn't bloomed in a couple of years. I did have one small flower last year near the ground. I went to a nursery and asked for something to add to my plant and was told the nursery doesn't sell those plants anymore because in our region 4, they don't grow and flower. Is this true? My plant is a broadleaf variety.
It could be. If you do know the variety name, you can certainly send it to us. We'll do a little research for you, or you can do some self-research. But it sounds like I have the same problem happening at home as well right now. I don't know the variety because we moved into the place a few years ago, but it's right on the corner of my house, so it gets sun for about 5 hours, and I only got one bloom, and it was this year, and it was very small. So I'm thinking there's probably not a lot of light getting into it, enough for it to bloom. So I'm going to move it the next spring, and then hopefully next summer I'll see some blooms.
Yeah. Yeah. And it wouldn't be the zone, I don't think, because it is surviving and coming back every year.
Yeah.
Do you think the zone being too cold would kill the blooms since they kind of form on...
It very well could be. It's hard to say, especially, it matters, the zone matters a lot between species. Sometimes variety, not as much, but sometimes that does make a difference. But yeah, if you can find out what the variety is and then, let us know what it is, we can help you along with that.
Yeah, Kathy says it is in full sun.
Okay.
Have you soil tested around the area to make sure that it's got good soil, not too alkaline, not too base?
Yeah, start with a soil test. I'm not sure where she's located.
She did say zone 4.
Okay. So most provinces have a provincial extension program where you can send a soil sample to them. You can kind of choose what breakdown you want. They're pretty inexpensive, $20, $30. They'll let you know how much nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, what your pH is in the soil, any of that, and if it's high or if it's low, and then that'll kind of give you a good basis of where to start.
Yeah, because a high nitrogen would focus on green leaves and not flowers.
Yeah, which you see kind of often people, a lot of people have shrubs in the middle of their lawns, and then they fertilize their lawns, and the fertilizer putting on their lawns is good for the grass, but it's not good for the shrubs.
Yeah. I even had a family member who had a lot of pine needles, and they do a lot of nitrogen, and that was just putting so much nitrogen on top of her fertilizer. She was only getting green leaf. So sometimes it can be, she's in Quebec Eastern Townships.
Okay.
Test your soil. Maybe it's too high in nitrogen. Could be so many things.
Yeah. I'm not super familiar with Quebec and their provincial extension programs. I'm assuming they do have it because they're a huge agricultural province. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. Leslie says, I seem to have poor germination with my beans. What can cause this, and is there time to replant?
So it's not like there might be two things. The first one might be drought.
Mm-hmm.
The second one might be a pest that you don't even know it's there, and that's cutworms. Cutworms come out at night when everyone's asleep, and they go and they bite right onto the stem, right at the soil level, and they topple it over like a tree, and then they peace out, and you don't see them the next day. And then they'll come out the following night again. So it could be either of those things. We did have a customer come in last week, and they were having problems with germination in their beans, and we discovered that there was actually cucumber beetles laying larvae were burrowing into the cotyledons, which are the first leaves that come up. And it was causing causing the germination to drop, really poor vigor, that sort of thing. So it might be that as well.
Damn those cucumber beetles.
I know. They're just everywhere.
I saw those beans. That was the problem?
Yeah, that was a problem. I started picking them apart, found a little larvae in there, identified it, and I was like, that's a cucumber beetle larvae.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
Is there time to replant?
Absolutely. Lots of time to replant.
And how late can you replant your beans?
Depends on your zone. So I would go based on your potential last frost date and then subtract 60 days from that, and then I wouldn't plant past that minus 60 day mark.
Yeah.
So if your last frost is end of September, then I wouldn't plant anything past the beginning of August.
Yeah. Successive planting is a good idea, so you don't have everything ready at once.
Yeah, exactly.
Peter asks, my onions are forming on top of the soil. Should I cover them or should I leave them as they are?
Nope, you can just leave them as they are. If you cover them, you risk the potential for soil-borne diseases and pests to start burrowing into the bulbs. which can either kill them or when you go to harvest them, it's going to reduce the longevity of storage for them.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who haven't grown onions probably expect it to grow like a carrot where, it's all underneath the soil. But they do grow predominantly out of the soil.
Yep.
And that's not a bad thing.
No. It's just how they grow.
Yeah. So don't cover your onions. Let's see. Mary, should I be deadheading my shockwave petunias? By August, they seem to fizzle out.
Yep. Deadhead your petunias, especially, if there's a rain coming, deadhead them then as well. They can... Actually, when they get wet, they'll land on the leaves and they're quite sticky, and then they mold, and then they tend to mold the leaves, and then they'll speed up the process of them not looking great by the end of the season. Deadhead them whenever there's rain coming, whenever you see dead blooms, even giving them like a little trim back every once in a while too to help them bush out. That'll certainly help them along too.
Yeah, I always deadhead the petunias, even the self-cleaning ones. I just find that I take it back a little further and it just puts out more growth.
Yeah.
Could also be a fertilizer thing.
Yeah, it could be.
They're heavy feeders, especially because they bloom so much.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, deadhead your petunias.
I think once a week with the triple 20 water soluble is pretty good for petunias.
All right, Darren, are there any companion plantings you swear by and any you would avoid?
I wouldn't say there's any that I avoid per se, but like dill and marigolds back home in Nova Scotia, great for keeping the deer away. And we don't have deer here, but the deer don't like the really heavy scented plants, so I always used to plant those around my vegetable gardens to help keep them away. Not so much at planting, but like I would take an overturned pot, put it outside, get some spiders in the garden. You can always introduce lots of flowers for birds and such in the garden as well. There's a number of things you can do.
Yeah. I have heard that you aren't supposed to plant sunflowers close to pumpkins. Is that true?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what their relationship with each other is.
I think maybe the sunflowers steal something from the soil that they might want.
It could be. I'm not entirely sure. There is a, that's a good point too. If like, tomatoes and peppers and eggplants are all in the same family, not that they can't be planted together, but if you can get some space between them because they are affected by all the same pests. So if they're planted right together, then the pests are easily going to spread between them. But if you can get some space between plants, then it'll helpfully slow down the pest infection.
Especially when like you've got potato beetles on your eggplants, so then you spray your eggplants and then they just all move to the pepper plants.
Yes.
It's a fun time.
You can always tell here when farmers have been out in their fields treating their fields for potatoes because we get a large influx of potato beetles on our eggplant.
Yes, they show up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Carolyn wants to know any suggestions as to what I can grow in my garden bed after I harvest my garlic.
Garlic in the fall. You could do some quick growing crops. So you could try some peas, kale, arugula, some leaf lettuces, anything like that would be really well.
Spinach, radish.
Yeah.
They like the cold.
Yeah, radish would be a good one, especially like some of the varieties we carry are like 30, 40 days turnover from seeding. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Good use to not keeping dead space in your garden.
Yes.
Always good to replant.
Yes.
Donna, I'm growing gherkins for the first time. At what size do I pick them? And are they still okay if I pick them too late?
So it kind of depends what variety you have and what kind of size you want. I really like baby dill, so I'm picking them like as soon as the flower falls off, I'm picking them.
Yeah.
But if I want something for bread and butter pickles, I might like for Regal. I might like get them maybe 4 or 5 inches long, maybe 3-4 inches around, and then I would be picking them.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, once they kind of start to turn white or yellow, they're starting to get a little overgrown. And because so many of them do produce on a plant, you kind of understand what size they'll get to before that color starts to come out.
Yeah. I'd rather eat it a little too young than a little too mature.
Yes, I agree.
They get a little woody, is that the right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Cucumbers don't really have much of a flavor anyway.
Yeah, they get the skin can get really tough. Just when they're younger, the better.
I'm looking forward to cucumber season. I'm looking forward to that.
I love cucumber season.
And did we put Avenger in again this year?
I don't believe Avenger's in this year.
Thank goodness, because it takes a long day harvesting them.
We did a lot of field cutes this year, and we have a lot of container types, snacking types, which is very fun.
Oh, our video just went out.
Oh.
Let's see. I show it though. Maybe we're back. I see us.
Maybe if Tracy is there, she can confirm.
Yeah. We are still feeding, so maybe just a slight technical difficulty.
I think so, yeah.
I think our first technical
It's
difficulty.
not bad. It's not bad. For two people who love plants and work outside, that's not bad.
Yeah, we don't have a production crew. It's just us. So, Cliff says, "What are all those white butterflies hanging around my broccoli?"
So those are importage cabbage worm, and you do not want those. As pretty as they are, they will decimate your brassicas so quickly.
In many ways,
yeah.
they're really disruptive.
They're very destructive. Yeah, you'll see them flying around because they're either looking for a mate or looking for some place to lay the eggs. And once those eggs hatch, you have these maybe half an inch to quarter of an inch little larvae caterpillars, and they will start munching on everything on the plant, and they will clean them up very quickly.
And with all the munching comes pooping.
Yes.
So, like, even if there's just a little bit of damage, they're leaving their poop all over it.
If you're starting to see those moths around, check the undersides of the leaves, the growth points, the stems. The caterpillars can be hard to pick up sometimes because the color is very close to like the leaves. So just look very closely for them.
And what do you recommend?
Either hand picking or BTK are the best things.
Or shade cover, or not shade cover.
Row cover.
Row cover.
Yeah, row cover works well too.
Yeah, because then they can't land on your plants.
Yes.
And they'll keep flying around.
Yep.
How can I discourage a groundhog from eating my pumpkin leaves?
That's a good one. I've never had problems with groundhogs before.
We don't have groundhogs on Prince Edward Island.
No, and I've never dealt with them like in Nova Scotia or New Brunswick either. That's very interesting. I'm assuming probably the same as deer, some like highly scented stuff. I don't know if that'll attract them more. You could certainly try that.
Well, they would be a mammal, so they would be susceptible to like a capsicum spray.
That's critter ritters. You can certainly try that. Yeah, that's a great point.
You would have to reapply every time it rains, but it's like the same stuff as like hot peppers, and when they eat it, it gets very spicy, and they don't have ice cream and milk to help them, so they won't eat it anymore.
Yeah. Blood meal sometimes works, but I'm a little hesitant. I don't know what they'll go after. I know blood meal will work for like rabbits, squirrels, that sort of thing, but I'm not entirely sure about groundhogs, but that might be a read the label before you apply kind of thing.
Yeah. Sam says, how do you heat your greenhouse? We use an oil furnace, but I'd like to move to something more eco-friendly solution.
So ours here on the property is oil heated, but saying that, there are some really cool ways you can heat your greenhouse at home. My first small greenhouse that I bought from here when I first got into gardening was a little 6x8 greenhouse. So what I had done is I had built some shelves that I put on top of the 11-liter ice cream buckets. And I took those buckets and I filled them full of water, put the covers on them, and then put black garbage bags over them where you could spray paint them black. And then when the sun would hit them, they would just like take in all the heat, and then at night they would slowly release it over time. So you would get like maybe 2 or 3 degree difference inside. A lot of greenhouses, or I shouldn't say a lot, but like some greenhouses will have like an actively composting pile of organic matter in the center because that lets off a lot of heat too. That's another great way.
Solar panels could also help. I followed this guy on YouTube. He's in Finland. He's a pepper grower, and he has a greenhouse, and all that's in his greenhouse is peppers. But he has a hot tub in there.
Ooh.
And in the winter, the hot tub keeps the greenhouse warm, and it keeps it humid, and he gets to hang out in his hot tub. He's usually drinking champagne, hanging out with his plants.
So what I'm hearing is save the planet by stop burning like a lot of oil, switch to a hot tub and help your plants, and then you also get to enjoy the hot tub.
Exactly.
It's like a triple win.
That's like life goals.
Yes.
If I could put a hot tub in the greenhouse, we'd never get any work done though.
No, you wouldn't catch me outside the hot tub.
No. Mary Ellen says, I have a mock orange bush that isn't blooming regularly. It grows taller and is healthy. Any suggestions?
I would say try regenerative cutting, see if that helps it along a little bit. Yeah.
And are you fertilizing maybe too high in nitrogen? Soil testing?
I'm kind of like well-established perennial beds and shrubs and trees. Once they're in after a couple of seasons, I basically don't water them and I don't fertilize them anymore.
Yeah. They come established.
Once they're well established, the flowers fluctuate with how well they do with the seasons. So I just kind of let them do their own thing at that point.
Yeah. And if it was like last year, it could be like the free cold snap that comes through, kills the blooms.
Yeah.
Anita, my bee balm has spread quite a bit. How do I prevent it from spreading any further?
So you can cut the flowers off once they're done blooming. That's just removing the seed heads that are about to form, and then the other thing is just cleaning up any little plants you see coming around.
Yeah.
But taking off the flowers would be the big one.
In the spring when it's coming up, maybe digging out where it's spread and keeping it within its spot. Bee balm loves to grow, but
yes.
it could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on what you want.
Yeah, I'm in the side of just let it do its thing and let it just kind of take over and naturalize.
See, I'm the opposite. I'm like, stay in your lane.
I'm very much a naturalized kind of gardener. Put it in and let it do its thing.
See, I feel that way about the milkweed, but then
to an extent,
the geraniums, I'm like, you're too big.
Yeah.
Stay in your spot. The hostas.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, we have some very big hostas on the property.
They are huge. You mentioned them yesterday, and I was walking by, and I was like, "Whoo!" It would take you and I, and maybe Nathan, to conjoin our hands and wrap our arms around it.
Some of them are just massive. I don't even know if we'd be able to separate them. We'd have to get tow it out.
We'll get some excavators in. We'll get some of those big dump trucks they have for in the strip mines and stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stephanie, when is the best time to harvest my garlic scapes, and how do I know when to pull the garlic from the ground?
So the best time to harvest is after you see the curl happen in the scapes, but before the blooms open. You want to harvest them before the blooms open. After that, they get woody and not great.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the second part of her question?
Oh, when should you pull the garlic from the ground?
And then you should pull your garlic from the ground once half to 2/3 of the foliage turns brown, and it'll start from the bottom and work its way up. And once you're there, you can pull them out and set them somewhere to dry, and then cut the tops off at maybe 1 or 2 inches above the bulb, and then bring them in for the winter.
Yes, and then eat forever.
Yeah. And letting them dry is no green left at all, completely brown. There shouldn't be any soft parts anywhere. Completely dry.
And would you lay them to dry or hang them to dry?
Some people hang them, some people lay them. At home, we hang ours.
And here we lay them out to dry.
Yeah.
But we flip them regularly. We rotate them to make sure that they dry evenly.
Yeah, we put good use to the greenhouse in the late summer to help speed up the drying process for a lot of things.
Yeah, onions and
garlic.
And curing some squash.
Yeah,
sometimes.
we cure lots of squash in there too.
Especially last year with all that rain we had.
Yeah, we had to.
It was really nice seeing that sea of squash, though.
Yes, that'll be back again this year.
How do you find the pest pressure so far this year?
Cucumber beetles have been pretty relentless this year. I haven't found the flea beetle all that bad. They've been bad in our raised beds where some of our arugula and our radishes are. Mm-hmm. But the field hasn't been totally terrible. I haven't seen a whole lot of cutworm, but our beans were just starting to come up before all this rain came, so I'm interested to see what that's like now. Outside of that, it hasn't been totally bad.
I haven't seen a lot of slugs. I haven't really seen, much anything. I haven't seen any earwigs yet.
I haven't seen any earwigs. I'm thinking that dry spell we had must have really backed a lot of that stuff off.
Yeah. Your wife said she saw some earwigs on her lettuce. Was that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't seen any earwigs. I don't want to see any earwigs.
No. They're coming. It's Prince Earwig Island.
I haven't even I found that this year was, there was hardly any June bugs.
There wasn't a lot of June bugs. The only thing that there was a lot of this year were the horseflies and such. More than usual, and they're hanging around a lot longer than they typically do in the season.
They are stalking me.
Yes.
It is quite mean. They get a taste of your skin and they just follow you forever.
Yep, that's it.
I hope it's a good year for pests because I hate all the pest pressure.
I know. Me too. I think it will be because we're off to a good start now. So.
Right. Well, it means it'll be dry, so then we'll have to fight other things.
Exactly. It can never be perfect. You're always fighting something in the garden.
Absolutely. George, how important is it to prune suckers off a tomato plant? I've never done it and always gotten good harvest, but will it improve if I prune them?
I mean, some people prune the suckers, some people don't. We've started pruning the bottom 3 to 5 suckers off our plants, and then we just kind of let them go. And that's more for airflow than anything. We want to make sure we don't have any fruit laying on the ground. Late in the season when it gets really wet and damp again, we want to make sure there's no chance, or we're lowering our risk for blights and stuff. Mm-hmm. In terms of improving quality and yields, I think you would get a very small influx of that, I don't think you'd see a noticeable difference. You know, if you get a tomato that's 100 grams, maybe that tomato becomes like 105 grams, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not getting like the noticeable like increase in yields by any means.
Yeah, we prune some. Some we never get a chance. They're pretty comparable.
Yeah.
It is easier to trellis if you are pruning out your suckers.
Yeah.
It is very easy to trellis that way. Indeterminate tomatoes can get unruly.
Especially the cherry tomatoes, they're like as tall as I am or taller by the end of the season.
Yeah, the sun golds especially, but they're allowed because
they're allowed because they're delicious.
Is sun gold in the field this year?
It's always in the field.
Okay.
If we're doing cherry tomatoes, sun gold is there. We're always doing cherry tomatoes.
I didn't plant the tomatoes this year, and I didn't plant them in the field, so I didn't see.
Right.
Jessica, how much do I need to let my tulips and daffodils die back before I cut it back? They are looking so messy.
I would let them go until they're completely brown, and then you can cut the leaves off or just let them there and they'll break down or they'll fall off. But totally brown.
We were doing some pruning yesterday because it's too wet to plant, and I like to grab it, and if I can grab it and give it a little twist and it comes out, it's ready. But if I have to do any amount of forcing, it's not ready. It
looks really messy, but it's so important for those bulbs to get that extra energy, especially if you want them to come back the following year and flower really, really well. It's really important that they get that.
Yeah, because next year you might get some growth, but you won't get any flowers.
Yeah.
And can you bring it back from that?
It's really difficult to. Very difficult to. Basically, it'd be like, if we were going into fall and I was already, I didn't put on my winter weight. If I were, if I were a bear going into winter, I have my summer weight, and you duct tape my mouth closed and I wasn't able to eat anything to prepare for winter.
Yeah.
That's essentially what you're doing. You're taking away its food source.
Right. You're making it starve going into hibernation.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's got no energy for bulbs, and bring it back, maybe some bulb fertilizer.
Yeah.
It's probably best to just, if it didn't bloom, I would probably dig it up and put new ones in.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of bulbs, they do have a lifespan, 3 years, 4 years, I think max, and then those are for some of the newer varieties. Some of the old varieties, they'll just last forever. But I think a lot of the new varieties, 3-4 years, then you start looking at to replace them.
I think the more unique the flower is, the shorter its lifespan is.
Yeah.
That's
especially true for tulips. 1 to 2 years, especially for some of those specialty tulips, and then you have to look at maybe replacing them.
Yeah, but the old classics, they'll grow forever.
If they've been there for 60 years, they're going to be there for another 60 years. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah, I cut back all of my tulips that were in my yard. I grew mine in my grass though, and I was an experiment. I know the muscari and the enemy is going to come back. I don't know if the daffodils and tulips are. It was really hard to cut the grass.
It does make it difficult. I do know some people who do that, but yes, it does make it very difficult.
Well, I wanted it to naturalize, and I didn't think the grass would grow that much this spring, and I was wrong. It was very hard to make it look neat and tidy.
So it just sounds like you need to put more bulbs in until there's no grass left.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true.
Because even if you had all that foliage, just a lawn of all that foliage from the bulbs, even after they're done flowering, it'd still be really pretty.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. I don't know what people thought when they drove by.
I thought it looked great when I drove by.
I gave someone directions to my house, and I didn't give them my house number, and I was like, my house is the one with all the daffodils in the grass, and they found it.
Yes.
I was like, that's crazy.
There's not many places around with daffodils in the grass.
Marjorie says, when should bulb fertilizer be applied to tulips? And, hang on, I lost it. You can answer that, and I'll leave the rest of it.
Bulb fertilizer to tulips, so you could do, I like to do fertilizer in the spring. I never like doing fertilizer in the fall, just because in the fall, plants should be going into a dormant state. They should be getting ready for winter and sleep, and we shouldn't be feeding them. If you're actively feeding them, you're preparing them to start growing, so that can actually harm them going into winter. So usually spring is the best time to fertilize. As soon as that initial snow is gone from the winter, I'd be out there with the fertilizer sprinkling it on.
All right, I missed Marjorie's other question. She said, I was late planting my dahlias this year. They are barely above ground, and they are so saturated now. Can this damage the tubers? Anything that I can do?
It could damage the tubers. Did she say if they were in a container or bed?
She didn't.
Okay, if they're in a bed, you could always dig them up and put them in containers. That'll help with drainage. If in your garden, and then you could add some organic matter to your garden to help with some drainage, especially if the soil is really heavy in clay. But yeah, it can damage the tubers. You might not see it this season, or you might start to see it near the end of the season, but going into the fall, if you're trying to dry the tubers for the winter, that's when you'll really see it starting to come out.
Yeah. Some of the tubers that we had in the greenhouse, some of the containers got like a little bit too much water.
Yeah.
And, one tuber of the cluster of tubers had kind of molded, turned to mush. And it wasn't spreading to the other ones. I think it'd be fine, but we did remove it when we put it in the ground.
Yeah.
We normally start ours in pots and put them out just to get them going.
Yeah.
But if you're late, like, there's still time.
There's still plenty of time. Yeah.
I have dahlia tubers in my trunk, so there better still be time. All right. Oh, it's in a planter box with drainage.
Okay. So yeah, I would cut back any watering if you're doing any. Maybe look at the location, make sure it's not under any of the eaves troughs or anything like that. If you're still finding that the tubers are rotting, then I'd recommend popping them out and just putting them in a pot somewhere else. Maybe waiting till that box maybe fills out a little bit more with more plants, so they're actively taking up more water and removing it from the soil. Then I would look at putting it back in. But if it's things are a little not sparse, but thin and they're not big and lush yet, maybe pop it out and put it in its own container.
Yeah, and I think Marjorie is up west, Summerside area.
We've been having rain. You've been having rain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's up west, so she's got way more rain than us.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you put them in a pot and brought them in your house for a couple of days, let them dry out, let them be warm.
Yeah.
Put them under your new light garden.
Yes, exactly.
That's a perfect use for that.
Yes.
Yeah, they should be fine, but if you want to make sure that they're really good, I would do that.
Yeah.
She said they're flooded. Yeah, we saw Matt Compton's field, and he's got water, and he's just outside of Summerside.
Yes, we've had, I think, we looked about 40 mils over the last week, or probably more now, but we'll say 40 to 50 mils in the past week, and up west is well over 100, I would say.
Yeah, we've been lucky, because on Friday when we got the thundering and lightning, we only got 0.2 mil, but it was like a torrential downpour up west.
Yeah.
Let's see. We have gotten 3.2 mils today.
Mm-hmm.
In the past week, we have gotten 52.4 mil.
Yeah.
And they've doubled that.
Yeah, easy double that.
And then how much rain are we getting today? Up to 20?
Something like that, yeah. And then we're getting more again Sundays, so.
Yeah. So.
Careful what you wish for.
I feel like once it stops raining, though, it's not going to rain for a really long time.
I was talking with Jeremy, who you've all seen on here a few times before
Mm-hmm.
this, and, he's like, this happened last spring before we had all the rain. We had that 10 to 14 day dry period, and then it just didn't stop raining. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. That did happen last spring.
Yeah, but then it kept raining all summer.
It kept raining all summer, but we're kind of lining up for that to happen again, but I was like, oh my gosh, I hope that doesn't happen again.
I hope so too, but I mean, it's been a full week of rain.
Yes.
We still have so much left to plant. Mostly our flower displays.
Mm-hmm.
Our trial plants take priority over our displays. We need to get at it.
Yeah.
We don't have our big display planted for Canada Day, and we can't because it's too wet.
Yes.
It's like planting in mud.
This is just the working with Mother Nature. This is what we have to work around.
Yeah, but I get to weed. I got to fight with the rose bush yesterday.
Yes.
But it's really good. It's really cathartic to cut down dying branches.
Yes.
And make everything look nice. Things haven't been pruned back in a while.
Yes, it's nice to start getting everything kind of back into shape and back where it needs to be.
Mm-hmm. Finding the ground again.
Yep.
Creeping Charlie.
Yep.
Creeping Charlie.
Creeping Charlie has to go.
Creeping Charlie. And goutweed.
Yes.
Damn the goutweed.
Mm-hmm.
We put some Roundup on goutweed, and it got stronger. I swear.
Goutweed is, take whatever it takes in only makes it stronger.
My 20-year-old Japanese lilac tree only has a couple of blooms this year. Last year and the years the trees was full. Should I clip off the spent blooms?
Yes, you should. And lilacs respond really well to regenerative cutting. So you want maybe 3 to 5 main stems coming from the soil, and any more than that, you want to start removing some of the old growth. Once you start doing that on a regular basis, year to year, you'll have flowers every year.
Yeah, and you really have a short window of when you can prune your lilac. It's preparing next year's blooms this year, kind of like a hydrangea.
Yeah.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 weeks prune off. We did it last week on Friday in the heat wave.
Yes.
That was perfect heat wave work.
Yes.
We pruned our lilac bush, but we didn't do it last year, and we didn't have as many blooms this year as we had last year. But we pruned everything we could reach. If I only had a boom truck, we could get the tops. Marjorie says, is it too late to apply bulb fertilizer to tulips? Better to wait to next spring? They were so beautiful this year.
Yeah, I would just wait till next spring.
Yeah, they're in their starting to hibernate phase. You
Yeah.
wouldn't want to try and convince them to grow again.
Basically, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I keep going out of the chat somehow. I'm like having major technical difficulties today.
We'll blame it on the rain.
Blame it on the rain. Blame it on the rain. So yeah, we'll wait to see if any more questions come in. Anything you need to add?
I don't think so. It's been a couple of weeks trying to get stuff in the heat wave, and I was gone for a couple of days too, and then this week has been kind of a write-off for planting anything. We've been just trying to catch up on some weeding. So.
And are our radishes ready to harvest?
So our radish, Roxanne, I would say, I'm sure if we went up there now, we could find some to harvest now. Yeah.
Nice. And how's our spinach looking?
Spinach is looking good. It's a little slow, but I'm thinking after this rain, we'll see a lot of growth out of it.
Nice. And what else is up in those beds?
There's some arugula in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all that's there right now.
Did we do beets in there? No, we put beets in the field.
Yeah.
We put beets in the field.
Those are coming quite well too.
And then what else are we putting in our container bed up there?
We're going to do some oriental or Asian vegetables up there. So some bok choys and some other things.
Delicious.
We're trying to put all those things that the flea beetles love. We're trying to keep them as far away from the field as we can so we don't have to apply as many pesticides or any to them. So far, the flea beetles have found the arugula, so we'll have to try another method next year.
We really need a catch crop.
Hanging basket. We're gonna put everything in hanging baskets next year. They can't reach them then.
I think the flea beetles really like white flowers.
Yes.
We'll have to plant white flowers in a circle.
They like those scented, spicy kind of plants, like the arugulas, mizunas, that sort of thing. Mustards, love them. Yeah.
Plant the mustard over there. Be like, hey, look over here,
yes.
And then plant our stuff over here.
Yep. Exactly.
Did we get our cover crop in?
Cover crops are in now. Yep.
Cover crops are in.
Yep. So one field we did oats and tillage radish. That's coming along very nicely, and then the other field we did sorghum, Sudan grass, and tillage radish. So.
Yeah, we did the tillage radish last year. It did really well.
Yeah, did very, very well.
It did very well. It was growing so well. It was pushing itself out of the ground.
Yes.
And we left it all winter, right? And you just tilled it in this spring.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, we will be back in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Hopefully everything's planted.
Everything will be planted.
Our greenhouse will be empty. It'll finally stop raining. Marjorie can finally dry out.
Yes.
Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. It was a lovely day, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thank you.